Okay, we're starting a new book. Oh, she took the box. You have one of these?
Oh, no. I got the other one.
We can get one.
We can get one for you.
Yeah, there was one in the box and I neglected to get it out before she took the box. Yeah, there were two in the box actually, the new quarterlies for 1 Samuel. All right. What do you know about Samuel?
Prophet.
Apparently we need a new book too. That's an old one.
You got an old one?
Was this one laying out there? Was that yours?
No.
There you go, right?
He was born in the 11th century.
Born somewhere around 1105 BC, right? And we're going to study his birth situation today. But where does the book of 1 Samuel fit in the Bible?
Just before that.
On page 355.
Page 355.
It's in the Old Testament.
Old Testament.
Right
You know,
after Ruth.
In the English Bible, not in the Jewish Bible, by the way, Ruth is back with the minor prophets. Because you have the chronology of Israel, right? All the way from Genesis through 2 Kings. And so you have the sequence of events, and I'll pass this little thing around I printed out, and I'll print out more if anybody wants one. But this is the end of the period of the judges. How long was the period of the judges? When Israel was ruled by judges?
About 200 years.
About 400 years. Supposedly, right?
How many?
About 400 years.
400.
You know, this tells you, just give you an idea, you know, the judge before Samuel was Samson. So Samuel, the major one, Samuel was the last judge and the first prophet. Kind of an interesting role. So you have the transition from the judges, right, not only to the prophets, but to the kings. Because it's Samuel that anoints Saul and David to be king, right? So, if anybody wants to take a quick peek at that. So, Samuel is all about these transitions. Now, what does the name Samuel mean? The EL on the end is a clue. The name of God, basically. It could be heard of God or asked of God, or his name is God, you know, but name, UL, name of God, basically. Okay? Who wrote the book of 1 Samuel?
Do we know?
Not really. The reason is 1 Samuel describes the death of Samuel. If Samuel is describing the death of Samuel, he probably didn't write all of it. Right? Now, he probably wrote some of it. You know, First Chronicles talks about the chronicles of Nathan the prophet, the chronicles of Gad the seer, right? So you have these guys writing this stuff down. So sometime later it was compiled into the book of Samuel, which was then in the English Bible separated into 1st and 2nd Samuel. Okay? Timing wise, like say he was born around 1105 BC. Okay? and he ministered in Israel from around 1067 to about 1015. So he lived to be about 90. Okay? So the book of 1 Samuel covers this 94-year period, from before his birth to just after. Okay, now, as we move into 1 Samuel, the interesting lesson is about his birth and about prayer and how God answers prayer, right? When he decides to. Kind of like God let James be killed, but then sent an angel to release Peter. But since God is sovereign, he can decide when is the best time to act and when is the best time to let things happen the way they're happening, without interfering, so to speak. It's all happening according to his plan. So let's go to chapter 1, verse 1. There was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophiim from the hill country of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. Now, when they say he's an Ephraimite, they're saying here that he is, by location, an Ephraimite. His family lived in the territory that was assigned to the tribe of Ephraim. But we know from 1 Chronicles 6 that he was actually a Levite. Why is that important?
Who was a Levite?
Samuel. Well, his father.
He hadn't been.
His father, and thus Samuel. We're talking about his father here, Elkanah, that he's actually a Levite. The reason is Samuel becomes a priest. What tribe is set aside for priesthood?
Levites.
Levites. Right? So so on the surface, somebody would say, oh, look, here's this contradiction. But it's not. He's from the area of Ephraim. By blood, he's a Levite. Okay? Now, and he had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Is this a problem for Hannah?
Maybe you'll look down on them.
Why did a Jewish man take a second wife?
To have children.
To have children. So after 10, 15 years with Hannah and no children, he took a second wife to have children, which he did.
And it's always the wife's fault.
Yeah, they blame the wife, right?
Yeah.
Little did they know, but, But why was it important for a Jewish man to have a son? A son, specifically.
To carry on his name.
Carry on the name and the ownership of the land. You remember the land is given primarily to the oldest son and perpetually. This land belongs to this family forever. Okay? If you have no son, you have a problem. So Hannah has this problem of having no children. What happens if Elkanah should pass away and she has no son? Financially, women didn't participate in the economic system, right?
Well,
And she would have,
his children would get that land.
well, the other children would in the case if Hannah didn't have any children. Obviously, Hannah's first wife, and thus, if she had a son, her son gets the land. Okay? Now, without a son, and we'll read here in a minute that the second wife, of course, is not very happy about the first wife, because the first wife's is getting most of the attention from the husband, right? So they got this jealousy thing going on, which does bring up the question: does the Old Testament forbid having two wives?
Apparently not.
No, but it always tells us what a bad deal it is. It's just not something that works out very well. Human nature doesn't fit in that scheme. Okay, right? Every time you see there's two wives, you got all kinds of stuff going on. All right, so in verse 3, now this man would go up from his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests to the Lord there. What do we know about those two dudes?
Fat slobs.
Good summary. They were not good people, right? Eli, on the other hand, with the exception of his failure as a father, was a pretty good guy, okay? Verse 4, when the day came that Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah, his wife, and all her sons and her daughters. But to Hannah he would give double portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had closed her womb. So if you're spending 15 years trying to have children and you can't, where do you go to get the problem solved?
Lord.
In modern day, where does everybody go?
Doctor.
Adoption.
Adoption after certain failures, but yeah, they go to the doctors and say, shoot me up with fertility drugs, right? And try to force the issue that way. When reality is, children are a gift from God. You want children, you want a gift from God, where should you go?
There we go.
Which is not a bad solution for almost every problem. Right? I used to say this a lot. I say, no matter the problem, the answer is Jesus.
Good starting place.
Yeah, that's where you go. I mean, who cares for you more than Jesus? Who wants the best for you more than Jesus? Who has all the answers except Jesus?
Except we don't go there first much of the time.
Yeah,
We
we like to wait till our backs are flat against the wall and we don't have any other option. And then we say, oh, I guess I'll talk to God about this. What a bad habit. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I used to love it whenever Gold Gym's over here. Their big yellow sign out front during the daytime, it did say Gold Gym. But then when things got dark, I thought it was a good picture of how we are when things get dark, because the L did not light up at night. So when things got dark, it was God's gym.
like it. Now, in verse 6, her rival. Doesn't that say a lot about their relationship?
They weren't best friends.
However, would provoke her bitterly to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb.
And the husband wasn't helping him by treating Hannah, giving her twice as much as they gave to the other one. And she had to share what she got with her kids.
He was giving stuff to her and her kids, and he's giving double portion to Hannah because he loved Hannah, and he wanted her to know that even though she didn't have children, she was still his favorite. He was trying to help her self-esteem, and of course she's feeding the problem, that she's having with her rival, right?
And also, maybe if her offering was twice what anybody else was giving, then maybe God would look with more favor on her.
That could be one of his reasonings, you know. We kind of rationalize things that way, don't we? Right? Verse 7, and it happened year after year, as often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she would provoke her, so she wept and would not eat. So every year, they go up there to do their sacrifice to God, and they have this big family feud. And Hannah would get so upset, she wouldn't even eat. Right? Now, I've only had one occasion where I was upset and didn't eat. And it was pretty ridiculous. 1971, Thanksgiving Day, OU lost to Nebraska 35-31, and it ruined Thanksgiving dinner. After that, I decided, you know, this is pretty darn silly. Right? By the way, OU women won last night again. Beat Michigan, number 2 ranked team in the country. So they're still in the winner's bracket playing tonight to eliminate somebody else. Okay. Now, I wrote here something that I heard one of the Goats say. I don't know if you know who they are. They're a singing family, Christian. And I heard him say this, 25 years ago. But it's hurting people who hurt people. The second wife feels like she's being mistreated, right? And thus she strikes out at the first wife. To your point, Paul, that, you know, the husband wasn't helping the situation with the way he treated Hannah, you know, better. Of course, he's just trying to help Hannah, right? Let her know that he loved her. Verse 8, then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? And why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? I treat you so well, right? But does any of that help with her problem?
Why do you think it worse?
You know, without a son, first off, her maternal instincts are not being fulfilled, right? The purpose of a woman was to get married and have children.
Right.
And if you have sons, the better, right?
She had the best of both worlds, so there, because she could love on the kids this other woman had, and then be shed of them, not have to.
Yeah, like a grandparent, huh? Yeah. But she also had the financial problem that if one happens to Elkanah, then she has no son to help her. She has no financial resources. Everything will go to the other woman's oldest son. And since there's this bitter rivalry, she probably is just booted out. And remember, he probably didn't take the second wife for 10 or 15 years. And now she's already had a bunch of kids. You know, Hannah is running out of time in terms of being able to have children. So she feels that pressure too. And she's being taunted by the second wife, just making things worse, right?
Year after year.
Year after year, every year. Okay? In verse 9, and Hannah rose after eating and drinking in Shiloh, and Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the temple. And she was greatly distressed, prayed to the Lord, and wept bitterly. The word greatly distressed is Mara. And in case you don't remember, the other use of Mara is in Ruth when Naomi was greatly distressed. Right? Same word. Okay? She wept bitterly, and she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on my affliction of thy maidservant, and remember me, and not forget thy maidservant, but will give thy maidservant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and a razor shall never come on his head. All right, a couple of things there. Let's talk about vows. Does the Old Testament tell us not to take vows?
Tells us we need to take them seriously if we make them.
That's exactly right. It doesn't say don't do it, but it tells you, boy, if you do it, you better fulfill it. Right? In Ecclesiastes 5, 4 and 5, it's very clear that if you do make a vow, follow up on it. Now, what did Jesus say about vows in Matthew 5 in the Sermon on the Mount? Anybody remember that? When he said, make no vow at all. Let your answer be yes, yes, or no, no. I personally think that was a slightly different type of vow. You know, if I said, Urban, boy, I swear I'm going to go do this, right? Jesus is like, what are you talking about? You have no control over anything that's going to happen tomorrow, right? Versus this type of vow where you're trying to make a deal with the Lord. Now, let's talk about making a deal with God. Does the Bible actually encourage us to try to make a deal with God?
No.
How are you saved?
By God's grace.
By grace. If God's going to forgive your sins, right, by grace, why do you need to do works to earn his favor?
Because it says not of works, lest any man should boast.
Yeah. But when you're desperate, how many people get sick or whatever, or financial problems, and then they're like, oh, Lord, if you only get me out of this one, I'm going to do this, this, and this, right? And how often do they actually do this, this, and this when the Lord gets them out?
What was that movie where, I forget his name, the movie star was swimming in and he wasn't afraid he wasn't going to make it. Lord, let me get there and I'll do this and I'll do that. And time we got to the bank and then all of the bets were off, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Says the Lord, if I ever get in that mess again.
Never mind, God, I made it on my own.
All right. But anyway, because of her desperate situation, back against the wall, right, type of deal, she's saying, Lord, if you just solve this for me, I'll give him to you. Right? Lord, if you let me win the lottery, I'll give money to this and this and this. Right? You know? But anyway, she's desperate. So she makes this deal. Now, does it say God answered it? What did it say? Now, she did end up with a son. So it appears God accepted her deal. Because the Lord had closed her womb, right? Now it wasn't closed.
He opened it.
Okay? Now she also says, and a razor shall never come upon his head. What does that mean? Who else didn't have a razor on his head? Like Samson, the Nazirite vow. How many people do we know had the Nazirite vow? Samson, Samuel, and who else? One more. John the Baptist. I read a commentator said there were only two, and I'm like, no, that's not right. You forgot about John the Baptist. You might have been implying in the Old Testament, maybe, right? And what was the Nazirite vow?
They didn't eat grapes or drink any kind of liquor.
They had a special diet, right? they were to be, they're set aside, dedicated to God, and one of the signs was they never cut their hair. Now, you could make a Nazirite vow for a period of time, for 3 days, 30 days, 1 year, which was probably not uncommon, but to have a Nazirite vow, quote, for life. So we only know of 3 people that fall in that category. There may have been others that we don't know anything. God chose for whatever reason not to include in the scripture, right? But we know of the 3. And now the funny part.
What would be the purpose of them doing it 3 days at a time, 3 months at a time, or a year? What would be the purpose?
It's just like, kind of like fasting today. You say, I'm going to take these 3 days and focus on God. I'm not going to take time to eat or do anything. I'm just going to study my Bible and pray and, focus on the Lord for the next 3 days.
Okay.
Right? That kind of thing.
But you have to make sure you do that. It's not just saying I want to do the vow and not carry through, so.
Yep. Now, verse 12, it came about as she continued praying before the Lord, right? Remember, Hannah's got anguish at home. She's got anguish at the temple. But where did she go? To God. Eli was watching her mouth. So apparently she wasn't speaking out loud. Was just mumbling her words, talking to God. Does a prayer have to be spoken out loud?
No.
Not at all. We know a lot about silent prayers, huh? As for Hannah, she was speaking in her heart. Only her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. Now, and he said to her, how long will you make yourself drunk? Put away your wine from you. Why would he think that?
Because she was moving her lips and acting like drunk.
Well, pagan influences had caused a lot of that kind of activity, even in the temple. To see somebody drunk in the temple, unfortunately, was not uncommon. So he saw her and he just assumed she was drunk. And that's probably the reason. But Hannah answered and said, no, my Lord, I am a woman oppressed in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord. Do not consider your maidservant as a worthless woman, for I have spoken until now out of my great concern and provocation. Right? Now, she's praying to God, and apparently God is listening, right? Eli has totally missed out on the spiritual aspect of what's happening. He's the priest. He's kind of the one that's supposed to be in tune, right? Eli answered and said, go in peace, may the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked him. So she made a silent prayer. Eli had no idea what it is. And he said, go in peace, may God answer your prayer. Now, did Eli have power to answer her prayer?
No.
No, only God. So he said, may God answer your prayer. He didn't say he answered it. He just said, may he answer it. I hope he answers it for you, right? And she said, let your maidservant find favor in your sight. So the woman went away and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Why?
Because she believed what she asked for God was going to do.
She had faith, didn't she? She had gone and was in the presence of God through her prayer in the temple, and she felt like God was answering her prayer. She went away. She's no longer sad. Now, did she know that God was going to give her a son at that moment? Did she know it? I'm guessing probably not. But I think she realized it's in God's hands. I don't have to worry about it. If he gives me a son, then I'll give him back to God. If he doesn't, God can take care of me no matter what. Isn't that right? And they arose early in the morning and worshiped before the Lord and returned again to the house of Ramah, in Ramah. And Elkanah had relations with Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And it came about in due time, after Hannah had conceived, she gave birth to a son, and she named him Samuel, saying, because I have asked him of the Lord. Then the man Elkanah went up with all his household to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, I will not go up until the child is weaned. Then I will bring him, that he may appear before the Lord and stay there forever. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, do what seems best to you. Remain until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord confirm his word. So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. Elkanah may not have been real happy about the fact that his new primary son was about to be left at the temple. You think? So he told her, make sure the Lord confirms his word. Now, when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with a 3-year-old bull and 1 ephah of flour and a jug of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh, although the child was young. Then they slaughtered the bull and brought the boy to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. For this boy I prayed. And the Lord has given me my petition which I asked of him. Now Eli knows what the prayer was. He didn't even know until now. So I have also dedicated him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is dedicated to the Lord, and he worshiped the Lord there. So we have an answered prayer, and somebody's worshiping. He. The boy, Eli, Elkanah, or all, I don't know.
Elkanah is probably happy about it, because he don't have to listen to the kid cry.
Well, he's weaned now. He's probably, the crying's gone.
Oh, that ain't the way it works.
He's probably kind of like Jacob was with his young son Joseph and whatnot, He's probably not all excited about this boy being, from his quote favorite wife, is now being shipped off and left at the temple, I bet he has some mixed feelings about it. And when he says, make sure you have confirmed his word, kind of implies to me that Elkanah had second thoughts about this, right? But apparently the Lord did, right?
This may, this may not be the time when I knew 3 guys that was, one of them was at OBU, and the other one, when I was in California. And the one at OU, he told me one day, he said, I cannot, I'm here, and my grandma, she prayed all her life that I would be a preacher, but I can't do it. He said, and I said, well, I was young at that time, and I said, well, I don't know what to tell you, but maybe just break it off with your grandmama. And he did. And he did it by moving away from her. And he gave me, he had a lot of Bible books, and he gave me all those, because he was gonna, he left at school. And then there were 2 California, was the same thing. I didn't handle that as such, but, I told him he ought to go to one of the professors
Yeah,
and let them compensate. But,
yeah.
in all three of those, Grandma was, trying to take that off. But see, how this handles it, it's kind of the same way. Anaya, she wanted that time. But,
And Hannah wanted to give her child to the Lord, and, you know,
Yeah.
what if the child grew up and didn't want to be there?
yeah,
My thought is, you know, Eli's done such a good job raising his other two sons, why not give him yours? You know, I was kind of worried about,
Yeah.
you know, that doesn't sound right, does it?
but it is sad, and